Thanks so much for joining us again this week. Hey, we're continuing our Begin Again series. And each week, as we've been finishing, 1 week of the series, we've been asking a certain question. These questions are really interesting, and we've been building on these questions, and one way that we build upon them is through our Begin Again group. It's a Facebook group that you can join that will allow you to interact with others and also get a little bit more content from me. I love doing that page. I don't care whether everyone's following it or no one's following it, I would still be posting. So I love sharing a little bit more information from this week's topic on that throughout the week. And so I really encourage you. The link will be in the comments section right now. You can click the link straight away. You can request to join and someone will approve you straight away. I encourage you to do so because it's in that group and it's us thinking about some of these questions throughout the week that is really going to grow us more in this Begin Again season. First week we asked this question. We asked, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? It's a super important question for us. Who do I want to be at the end of isolation? Who do I want to be at the end of this restriction period? Who do I want to be at the end of this virus as we begin a new season? Who do I want to be? The second question we asked in week 2 was this: what are my priorities? What are my priorities? Because the priorities that you choose, the priorities that you deem as the most important things, what are the most important things in your life, will create a pathway. It will create a life that you will walk in. And so priorities are essential. Who do I want to be? What are my priorities? And last week, I think, is one of the most important questions of all. In fact, I think last week's message was one of the most important messages that anyone could hear. We talked about the brain, and we talked about this. We talked about our thoughts. What will I allow to shape my thinking? And the most important element of that question is really not the entirety of the question. It's this: what will I allow? And so through our Begin Again group and other various groups and chats and things like that, we've been discussing what are the things that we allow to influence our thinking. Because what we think about, the things that we allow to groove our brains and our minds will flow out eventually in our action. And so we wanted to challenge ourselves about what we think about and how we think about it. And I also just challenged you, especially over the past 2 weeks, that our priorities should be to seek the kingdom first. Seek first the kingdom of God. And last week we talked about the fact that we should turn our eyes upwards to God because He is good. And when we turn our eyes up to God, what we do is we say to God, I want to embrace the way you think. I want to embrace the way you look at life. And so we've sort of twisting and turning this to be a little bit more of a God-central kind of life. And I want to ask the question this week straight up. I want it to be at the top of our talking today. And I want to challenge us at the end of it. It's this: where will I give my attention? Where will I give my attention? In asking this question, where will I give my attention? I think it's important that we give our attention to the word attention, that we actually try and define it for ourselves this morning. And here's how I want to define it. Attention is regarding someone or something as interesting or important. Attention is regarding someone or something as interesting or important. Where will I give my attention? The attention is regarding someone or something as interesting or important. Let me ask you a question. What do you deem as the most important thing? What do you deem as the most important thing? If we were to take time right now to sort of do a pie chart, right, of your life, and we sort of try to represent all different elements of your life. Maybe there's work, maybe there's your spouse, maybe there's kids, maybe there's church, maybe there's ministry, maybe there's religion, there's God, all those things. Maybe if we were to try and kind of chart them on this pie chart and we gave everything a percentage, let me ask you right now, what would be the biggest, highest percentage of that pie? What would be the biggest slice? You could visualize it right now. Listen, why don't we add a few more things on there? Why don't we add anxiety? Why don't we add stress? Why don't we add financial stress or anything like that? And let's just see that big circle, that big pie that we create. What is the biggest slab? What has your attention? Because the biggest part of that graph, the biggest slice of that pie, is what is it consuming the majority of your attention. And we need to pay attention to attention, because it's in that tension that we'll actually find something about ourselves. You see, in the Bible, there's this whole book called the Book of Psalms. And it's a book that's full of poetry, writing, songs, thoughts about God, reflections on what God has been doing for people, reflections on what God hasn't been doing for people. It's just this beautiful book that represents humanity in reflecting of God and attributes of God. And one of the Psalms that we will know quite well when we hear it is Psalms 46. Psalm 46. And in this psalm, the writer of this psalm says something that's a really, really beautiful phrase. It says this. It says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." It's that first phrase that a lot of us catch on to and hold on to. Be still and know that I am God. And for many of us, when we hear that, in fact, right now, even in your living room or in your study or in the back porch or in your bed, wherever you're watching this right now, I want you to take a moment and just perceive within yourself, what do you feel when you hear those words, be still and know that I am God? For some of us, we will feel peace. For others, we will feel a sense of duty, that I need to get along with my quiet times. For others, we will find and feel a sense of anxiety of, man, this is another thing. Because many of us think about this sentence, be still and know that I'm God. We think about it like this. We think that we have to find space on our calendar. And you may be thinking right now that you have to find space on your calendar. And because it's Mother's Day, I can talk to the mothers specifically today. Where on earth, right now, in the current climate of our world, do you find space on your calendar? Where do you find the space? For us right now, we've got 4 kids all at home, homeschooled, right? Where do I find the space to be still before God? For many of us, when we think of being still before God, we think of having to create a time slot on our calendar, of having to have a devotional or a quiet time or a 10-minute reading time or a 15-minute reading time. And many of us don't even get the break to have that space. Maybe right now, in the current season that we find ourselves in, maybe right now you are finding some more space and it's exciting and it's good. But the reality is, when we are in general life, when the ups and downs of life is happening all around us, we struggle very much to find space on our calendar. But here's what I want to say. I don't think Psalm 46:10 is calling us to find space on our calendar. In fact, I don't think that's what it's about at all. I don't think that this passage is about a realization that we need to be still before God, and we need to read our Psalms, and we need to read our Jesus Calling devotional, and we need to read all these. I don't think and believe that that's what the psalmist meant, because of these 2 lines afterwards. Be still and know that I am God. And this is like in God's voice, this is what God is saying. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Exalted means higher than. Exalted means more important than. Exalted means above everything else. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. There is no denying. That's what this passage is saying. That's what this phrase is reflecting on. According to God, there is no denying that He is the most exalted. He is the most important. He is the biggest. He is the most glorious being in all the universe. He's not questioning that. And the reality is that God doesn't need you to be still in order for that to be a reality. It's a reality regardless of whether you are being still or not. So when we look at that phrase and we think, man, I've got to find space on my calendar, that's not what it means. This is what it means. It doesn't mean find space on your calendar, but it actually means stop resisting and simply surrender. Be still and know that I am God is not find space on your calendar for me, please. It's not God pleading with us saying, hey, if you guys could just find 10 minutes for me, that would be amazing. It's not like God sitting down with you on a Zoom room chat line going, okay, let's get our diaries out, let's get our planners out, and let's work out when is the best time that I can have you and you can have me and we can just be still together. That's not what this means. God's not requesting. God's not passively, aggressively asking you to be still. God is saying, hey, listen, at some stage in life, whether it's in an up or it's in a down, whether it's in isolation or whether it's when all restrictions are lifted, at some stage in your life, you are going to know that I am God. Because I will be exalted in the nations and I will be exalted in the earth, and you will be still and recognize that. The difference is are we going to actually be still? Are we actually going to choose to be still, or are we going to be stilled by God? See, it doesn't mean find space on your calendar. What it actually means is stop resisting who God actually is and simply surrender to who He is. Let me ask you a question. What am I giving my attention to? Where is my attention? What is my focus? Is God, or does God have your attention? Because when we walk through this process, find the space on your calendar, that's not what it means. God's not asking you to find space on your calendar. He's actually asking you to stop resisting and simply surrender. Which means you will make space on your calendar. Do you see the slight difference that we have there? There isn't a variation there. There is something that we need to understand. Instead of you trying to find space on your calendar, when you finally stop resisting and when you finally start realizing and when you simply surrender, you will make space on your calendar. Because attention, to give something attention, means that you have deemed it as interesting and important. There'll be no question of whether you can fit this in. You will find the space to fit God in. Be still and know that I am God. God's not requesting it. He's not sheepishly coming to you and going, can you fit me in? He's simply saying, I'm exalted among the nations. I'm exalted in the universe. I'm bigger than you thought. I'm bigger than you could ever imagine. You need to be still, and you need to know that I am God. So what actually happens when we choose to be still before God? What's our attitude? What's our mindset? You see, when you give attention to something, what you're actually doing is exactly what the definition says. It's giving something or someone your attention. It's giving your undivided attention. It's something that's interesting and important. So instead of you doing all the speaking, it's important for us to understand that this thing that wants to speak to us is important, that it's interesting, and that it might actually have more to say to us, that God might actually have more to say to us than we need to say to God. Have you ever thought that God actually wants to get time with you? That actually God wants to get time with you alone? That God actually wants to have your full attention? Have you ever thought that God actually wants to share things with you? This is how ludicrous sometimes we treat God. It would be like me going to Lionel Messi or a Cristiano Ronaldo or someone like that, some sort of big, huge soccer celebrity, and someone said to me, hey, you're going to get 30 minutes with Messi. 30 minutes. You are going to get undivided time with the world's best soccer player. If he is the best, I don't know. You're going to get 30 minutes. No one else is going to be in there. Empty stadium. It's going to be silent, and it's going to be you and him. And I get so excited because I'm getting this undivided attention. I'm getting this space for us to be together. And what I do is I walk up there and I say, Messi, I want to thank you for the time that we've got today. And I want to show you how I can juggle 3 times on each foot. And then I'm going to show you how I can kind of, dribble the ball through a couple of cones. And then I want to show you that I can kind of sometimes kick the ball really hard. And maybe at times I can even hit the goals beautifully. At least 1 out of 5 times I'll get it in the net. And I spend the whole 30 minutes where other people would dream of having that space and that time. I spend the whole 30 minutes just speaking out and telling Messi where he went wrong, where he played wrong, where he should do better, what I need right now, and all of my skills. All of us right now would agree that that is a total waste of time. And yet, a lot of the time, it's how we come before God. See, we come before God and we say, God, I need this right now. I need this change. I need that boyfriend. I need that girlfriend. I need that financial situation change. I need better health. I need. And do you reckon that God is sometimes just saying, hey, you are in the presence of the biggest being, the creator of all the universe, the one that holds the stars in his hands. You are before me right now, and all you can do is talk. See, for a lot of the times, we're going to have to, when it comes to giving our attention to God, when it comes to being still and knowing that he is God, it means allowing God to speak to us, because I think that God might have more to say to us than we may have to say to him. In fact, it reminds me of this fisherman. Now, I like fishing, right? And I brought my huge beach rod with me today, which was a mistake because I'm probably going to hit the camera. But I brought this today because it reminds me of this story of this guy that's on his little single motor boat, and he's out in the ocean, and he's going to go fishing. And so he goes out quite a way, past the wave breaks and all that kind of stuff, and he gets out where it's a little bit more settled, a little deeper ocean, and he can still see the land off onto the horizon, or in the distance. And so he gets out his rod, and he gets this big hook on the end, and he sort of casts it out. And he ends up getting a good one, and he launches this thing, and it goes further than he ever thought imaginable. And to him, he thinks that the hook has hit water and that he'll hook up a fish soon. But in fact, what he's done, and listen, this is a story, okay? He has thrown it and cast out so far that he is actually hooked on to a little bit of land. Onto a rock. We would call that he snagged himself. And so what he does is he's got his rod out there and he thinks he's hooked a fish, and so he yanks it back and he starts reeling it in, and he's yanking it back and reeling it in and yanking it back, reeling it in. And all that time he's sitting there thinking, man, I've caught the biggest fish possible and I'm bringing that fish to me. And what he starts noticing is that every reel, every pull of the rod, the land is getting bigger in his peripheral. It's getting bigger in his vision. And so he reels it a bit more and he pulls a little bit more, and he sees that the land is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And stupidly, he wonders whether he is actually hooked the land, whether he's hooked the beach, whether he's hooked the continent and the country, and he's actually pulling this whole big thing towards him. But all of us know, all of us realize that he is not doing that. That is not what is happening here. What is happening here is that he is hooked onto a rock, and every reel he's actually dragging the boat closer to the land, not the land closer to him. Here's what I want to say to you, and it's super important. Here's a principle for you. When you get alone with God and when you're still with God, understand this. Being still is not you dragging God towards your wants. It's God dragging you towards God's will. You're not pulling a country closer to you. You're not pulling a beach closer to you or an island closer to you. It's God pulling you closer to Him. That is the importance of our attention. That is the importance of what we will give our attention to. It's not about you manipulating and leveraging God to do what you want. Because I think if there is a God who is bigger than the universe, who holds the very galaxy in His hands, He might have a few things that He wants to see happen in your life. You see, when we start this begin again process, and we've talked about who do we want to be, what do I prioritize, what will I allow to shape my thinking, all of this comes back to God. It's through the lens of God that we should create our priorities. It is God who we should look up to allow the controlling of our thinking, to allow the shaping of our thoughts. And I want to tell you right now that it is so important that each and every day you give your attention to God. Not because you can fit it on your calendar, not because you found space, but because He is God and He will be exalted above all the nations and He will be exalted in the earth. And we will be still and know that He is God. Either because we're forced to or because we've chosen to. Hey, if you want to succeed and you want to become that person that you can envision in your mind, you need to ask yourself this question: where will I give my attention? Attention. Something that is important and interest, you giving attention to that thing. Man, I just want to challenge you and encourage you so much this week. That you wouldn't try and find space, but that you would actually stop resisting, that you would actually stop arguing and fighting, that you would just simply surrender and say, you know what? I have no choice but to find space, to make space for God this week. And when you are in that space, please, look, God cares for you. It says to cast all our cares upon Him. You can pray for things, but man, you should find some time where you just allow the God of our universe to speak to you. And let Him share His hopes, dreams, aspirations, His challenge, His goals for your life. You know what? One of the most important things for us to do in life, in this begin again process, is to slow down and allow God to speak. Let's ask that question one more time. Where will I give my attention?